Welcome to Volume and Vision. Let me ask you something. What if the reason you never have enough time isn't because you are too busy? What if the real problem is that the most important things in your life are always waiting for later? Think about it. You wake up in the morning, and before you even leave your bed, your phone is already waiting for you. One message, then another, a few notifications, a quick look at social media, maybe one short video, then another, and suddenly, 20 minutes have disappeared. You get ready, rush through breakfast, start work or college, answer questions, attend meetings, complete assignments, deal with responsibilities, and keep moving from one task to another. Then evening arrives. You're exhausted. You tell yourself, I'll exercise tomorrow. I'll read tomorrow. I'll learn that skill tomorrow. I'll work on my dream tomorrow. And then tomorrow arrives, and the same thing happens again. This cycle can continue for months or even years. But here is the uncomfortable question. What if tomorrow is not a plan? What if it's simply the place where your unfinished priorities go to disappear? This is where the ideas behind Laura Vanderkam's What the Most Successful People Do Before Breakfast becomes so interesting. The central lesson isn't that successful people magically have more hours than everyone else. They don't. They have the same 24 hours. The difference is often in when they choose to spend their best time. And that single idea can completely change the way you look at your mornings. Because most of us give our mornings away. We wake up and immediately respond to the world. We check what other people sent us. We look at what happened overnight. We react to notifications. We start dealing with problems. And only after everything else is handled do we ask ourselves, what about my goals? But by then, our energy is already lower. Our attention has already been divided. And the day has already become crowded. Successful time management starts with reversing that order. Instead of allowing the world to decide how your day begins, you decide what deserves your attention first. Imagine waking up tomorrow and having just 1 hour that nobody can take away from you. No meetings, no calls, no deadlines, no notifications, no one asking you for anything. What would you do with that hour? Would you exercise, read, study, write, work on a business idea, learn something that could improve your career, spend time with your family, or simply sit quietly and think? Your answer is important, because it reveals something about what you actually value. The strange thing is that many people know exactly what they want to do with their lives, but they never give those things a place on their calendar. They say health is important, but exercise is always postponed. They say learning is important, but learning happens only when there is spare time. They say family matters, but meaningful conversations happen only when everyone is free. They say they want to create something, but creativity gets pushed to the end of the day. And the end of the day is usually when your energy is lowest. So what happens? Important things lose to urgent things. And this is one of the biggest traps in modern life. Urgent things are loud. Important things are quiet. Your phone makes noise when someone sends a message. Your inbox tells you when an email arrives. Your workplace tells you when something needs attention. But your health doesn't send you a notification saying, you have ignored me for 6 months. Your dream doesn't send you an emergency alert saying, please work on me today. Your relationships don't always demand attention until something is already wrong. The things that matter most can remain completely silent. That is why you have to protect them yourself. And for many people, the morning is the easiest place to do that. Not because waking up early automatically makes you successful. It doesn't. There is nothing magical about 5 a.m. Waking up early while sleeping badly is not productivity. Being exhausted at sunrise is not success. The real advantage comes from having a period of time when your mind is fresh, your schedule is relatively empty, and you can intentionally focus on something meaningful. For one person, that might happen at 5:30. For another, it might happen at 7 o'clock. For someone who works late at night, it might even happen later in the day. The clock is not the hero. Intentionality is. And once you understand that, the next question becomes very powerful. What would happen if you stopped waiting for free time? Because free time is often a myth. There will always be another email, another assignment, another meeting, another household task, another video, another notification, another reason to postpone what matters. So instead of waiting for time to appear, you have to reserve it. Think about your calendar like a suitcase. If you throw small things into it randomly all day, eventually there is no space left for anything important. But if you put the most important things in first, you can build the rest of your schedule around them. Your morning works the same way. Put something important there first. Even if it is only 20 minutes. 20 minutes may not sound impressive. But 20 minutes every day becomes more than 2 hours every week. Over a year, that becomes hundreds of hours. And hundreds of focused hours can completely change a person's abilities. A student who studies a little every morning can eventually become highly skilled. A beginner who exercises consistently can transform their health. Someone who writes a page every morning can eventually produce an entire book. Someone learning programming can slowly move from understanding basic concepts to building real projects. The individual morning may look insignificant. The accumulated result is not. This is why consistency beats intensity. You don't need a spectacular morning. You need a repeatable one. And this is where many people fail. They become excited by the idea of changing their lives, so they create a morning routine that looks impressive on paper. Wake up at 5. Meditate for 30 minutes. Run 5 kilometers. Read 50 pages. Study for 2 hours. Journal. Plan the entire day. Eat a perfect breakfast. And somehow be ready for work by 8. It sounds incredible. It also sounds exhausting. A few days later, the alarm rings. You stare at the ceiling. You hit snooze. And the entire routine disappears. The problem wasn't necessarily your discipline. The problem was the design. A good routine should challenge you without overwhelming you. Start with one meaningful habit. If exercise matters, begin with 15 or 20 minutes. If reading matters, begin with 10 pages. If learning matters, begin with 30 focused minutes. If writing matters, begin with a single page. Then repeat it. Let the habit become normal before making it bigger. Because the goal isn't to win Monday morning. The goal is to still be doing this 6 months from now. And there is another important step. Before changing your schedule, study your current schedule. For 1 week, track where your time actually goes. Not where you think it goes. Where it really goes. Write down when you sleep. When you wake up. How long you spend getting ready. How much time you spend commuting. How often you check your phone. How much time goes into television or social media. How long work actually takes. How long household responsibilities take. And how much unplanned time disappears between all of these activities. You may discover something surprising. You might not need to find 3 extra hours. You might only need to recover 30 minutes. Maybe your morning is slow because you're deciding what to wear. Prepare your clothes the night before. Maybe breakfast takes too long. Prepare something simple in advance. Maybe you lose 40 minutes scrolling through your phone. Move the phone away from your bed. Maybe you spend your evening completing tasks that could have been handled earlier. Rearrange them. Time management begins with awareness. You cannot improve a schedule you haven't examined. And once you understand where your time goes, you can ask a much more interesting question. If I could design my ideal morning, what would it look like? Don't copy someone else's routine. Don't assume successful people all wake up at the same time. Don't create a routine because it looks impressive on Instagram. Create one because it fits your life. Maybe your perfect morning begins with exercise. Maybe it begins with studying. Maybe it begins with writing. Maybe it begins with a quiet breakfast with your family. Maybe it begins with reading a few pages and planning your priorities. There is no universal perfect morning. There is only a morning that helps you become more like the person you want to be. And once you discover what that morning looks like, something changes. You stop waking up and asking, what do I have to do? You start waking up and asking, what do I want to make progress on? That is a completely different mindset. And it may be the difference between simply surviving another busy day and actually building the life you want. And once you discover what that morning looks like, something changes. You stop waking up and asking, what do I have to do? You start waking up and asking, what do I want to make progress on? That is a completely different mindset. But designing the perfect morning is only the beginning. The harder question is this: how do you actually make that morning happen? Because knowing what you should do and actually doing it are two very different things. Let's say you decide that tomorrow I'm going to wake up at 6 o'clock and spend 30 minutes learning something valuable. The plan sounds simple, but 6 o'clock arrives. Your alarm rings. You're comfortable. Your room is dark. Your brain immediately offers you a very convincing argument. Just 10 more minutes. And 10 minutes later, another argument appears. You've been working hard. You deserve more sleep. Then you check your phone. And suddenly you're watching something completely unrelated to your original plan. This is why your morning routine should not depend entirely on motivation. Motivation changes. Your environment is much more reliable. If your phone is beside your pillow, you're making distraction incredibly easy. If your running shoes are buried inside a cupboard, you're creating friction. If your study materials are scattered across your room, starting becomes harder. But if your phone is across the room, your workout clothes are already prepared, and your book is sitting on your desk, the first steps become almost automatic. Small environmental changes can make good decisions easier. Think about how supermarkets work. Products that are placed directly in front of you are easier to buy. Your environment influences your behavior constantly. So why not use that principle in your favor? Make the behavior you want easier. Make the behavior you don't want slightly harder. If social media steals your mornings, don't keep your phone beside your bed. If you want to read, keep your book where you normally sit. If you want to exercise, prepare everything the night before. If you want to study, decide exactly what you're going to study before sleeping. You are not trying to become superhuman. You're simply removing unnecessary obstacles. And there is another powerful strategy. Don't make the morning the time when you decide what your goal is. Make that decision beforehand. Imagine two students. The first wakes up and thinks, "What should I study today?" Then he opens his laptop. He checks messages. He looks at different courses. He searches for something interesting. 20 minutes disappear. The second student made the decision the night before. He knows exactly what chapter he will study. He knows where his notes are. He knows what problem set he will solve. When he sits down, there is nothing to figure out. He simply begins. That difference may seem tiny, but repeated every day, it becomes enormous. Preparation protects your future self from your present self. Because your future self will often be tempted to choose comfort. And that's normal. We are all capable of making excellent plans at night and terrible decisions in the morning. So don't depend on your morning self to make complicated decisions. Make them while you're calm. Now let's talk about another issue that quietly destroys productive mornings. Going to bed too late. Some people become obsessed with waking up early while completely ignoring the night before. They sleep at midnight, scroll until 12:30, watch one more episode, answer messages, then expect themselves to wake up refreshed at 5. That isn't productivity. That's sleep deprivation with a motivational quote attached to it. If you want better mornings, you have to respect your evenings. Your morning begins the night before. The quality of your sleep affects your energy, attention, mood, and ability to make good decisions. So don't treat sleep as time you're losing. Treat it as an investment. If you need 7 or 8 hours of sleep, then waking up earlier means going to bed earlier. You cannot negotiate with biology forever. And once you've protected enough sleep, you can begin experimenting with your morning. But remember something important. You don't have to become an extreme early riser. The title of this book may make it sound like the secret is simply getting up before everyone else. That's not the real lesson. The real lesson is about finding protected time. For some people, that time happens early in the morning. For others, it may happen later. What matters is that you identify the period when your attention is strongest and interruptions are lowest, then protect that period for something meaningful. Morning simply happens to be a particularly useful option because the rest of the world hasn't fully started making demands yet. And that quiet can be incredibly valuable. Imagine starting the day with one meaningful achievement already completed. You haven't answered every email. You haven't solved every problem. But you've exercised, or studied, or written, or spent time with your family. You have already kept one promise to yourself. That changes how the rest of the day feels. Even if the afternoon becomes chaotic, you know you didn't completely lose the day. You already did something that mattered. And that creates psychological momentum. You begin to see yourself differently. You become someone who keeps promises to yourself. That identity is powerful, because when your actions repeatedly match your intentions, confidence grows. Not the loud kind of confidence where you tell everyone how disciplined you are. The quiet kind. The kind where you know, I can trust myself. And that may be one of the greatest benefits of a good routine. You're not just managing time. You're building self-trust. Now let's take this idea beyond the morning. Because there is a bigger lesson hidden here. Your entire week needs intentional design. Most people plan their work. They plan meetings. They plan deadlines. They plan appointments. But they often don't plan the things that make life enjoyable. They leave happiness to chance. And that's a mistake. Imagine planning an entire vacation. You choose the destination. You book the hotel. You plan the route. You decide what places you want to visit. You think about what you'll eat. You make sure you have enough time. Why? Because you want to make the most of limited time. Your normal life deserves some of that same attention. This doesn't mean scheduling every second. It means deciding what experiences you don't want to miss. Maybe you want to have dinner with your parents once a week. Maybe you want to play a sport on Sunday. Maybe you want to explore a new place twice a month. Maybe you want one evening without your phone. Maybe you want to spend an hour reading on Saturday morning. If you don't give these things a place, they can easily disappear. And this is especially true on weekends. The weekend is often treated as a blank space. People say, "I'll see what I feel like doing." Sometimes that's wonderful, but sometimes, "I'll see what happens," turns into 6 hours of scrolling. You aren't really resting. You are simply consuming whatever happens to appear on your screen. There's nothing wrong with watching a movie. There's nothing wrong with sleeping late occasionally. There's nothing wrong with doing absolutely nothing. The problem is doing those things automatically rather than intentionally. Real rest is chosen. Passive consumption often happens by default. So try giving your weekend a few anchors. Not a strict schedule, just a few experiences you genuinely want. Maybe Saturday morning is for exercise. Saturday evening is for friends. Sunday afternoon is for family. Sunday evening is for preparing for the week. Everything else can remain flexible. This creates structure without suffocating spontaneity. And if you don't know what you actually enjoy doing, create a list. Write down things you've always wanted to experience. Don't only write huge dreams like traveling around the world. Include small ones. Try a new restaurant. Visit a museum. Watch the sunrise somewhere beautiful. Learn to cook a new dish. Go for a long walk without your phone. Take your family somewhere they've never been. Read a book in a quiet place. Try a hobby you've been curious about. The purpose isn't to complete the entire list. The purpose is to remind yourself that your free time can be used to create memories instead of simply filling empty hours. Because your life is not only made of workdays. Your weekends count. Your evenings count. Your mornings count. Small moments count. And eventually, all those moments become your life. This also changes the way we think about productivity. We often imagine productivity as doing more. More emails. More meetings. More projects. More hours. But sometimes productivity means doing less. Less unnecessary communication. Less scrolling. Less multitasking. Less time spent on tasks that don't actually matter. Consider email. How many times do you check your inbox every day? Once. 5 times. 20 times. Every few minutes. Every time you see a new message, your attention shifts. Even if you answer quickly, part of your brain has moved away from what it was doing. This creates a hidden cost. You may feel productive because you're constantly responding. But responding is not always progressing. There is a difference. Imagine that you have an important presentation to create. You could spend 3 hours answering emails. At the end, you might feel exhausted. But the presentation hasn't improved. Alternatively, you could protect 90 minutes to work on the presentation without interruption. You might accomplish more in that focused period than you would in several hours of fragmented attention. So ask yourself, what work actually creates value? That's the work that deserves protection. And this is another reason mornings can be useful. Your attention is a resource. Just like money, you should decide where to spend it. Don't spend your highest quality attention on low-value activities if you can avoid it. Save your strongest mental hours for things that genuinely matter. This idea becomes even more important when you're trying to build something long-term. Maybe you want a better career. Maybe you want to become a developer. Maybe you want to start a business. Maybe you want to write. Maybe you want to learn a difficult subject. Maybe you want to become physically stronger. None of these goals usually change your life in one afternoon. They require repeated effort, and repeated effort requires protected time. That's why successful people often seem incredibly consistent. They're not necessarily working harder every minute. They have systems that make important work happen repeatedly. And one of the simplest systems is decide, schedule, protect, repeat. Decide what matters, schedule it, protect the time, repeat until progress becomes visible. And when progress becomes visible, motivation often follows. This is where another important concept appears: small wins. Suppose you're trying to learn a new language. On the first day, you learn 10 words. That doesn't feel like much. After a month, you know hundreds. After 6 months, you can understand conversations that once sounded impossible. The transformation didn't happen on one magical day. It happened because small actions accumulated. The same thing happens with money. The same thing happens with fitness. The same thing happens with careers. The same thing happens with relationships. The same thing happens with almost everything valuable. Consistency turns ordinary actions into extraordinary results. So don't underestimate a 30-minute morning. You might think, what's the point? It's only 30 minutes. But ask a different question. What happens if I do this for 300 mornings? Now the answer becomes much more interesting. You could accumulate hundreds of hours of focused effort. That is enough time to become dramatically better at something. And once you understand this, you stop chasing dramatic transformations. You start looking for repeatable behaviors. You stop asking, how can I completely change my life this month? And start asking, what can I do every day that makes my life slightly better? That question is much more powerful. Because small improvements don't require heroic motivation. They require consistency. And consistency becomes easier when your routine is realistic. So if you're building your own morning routine, don't copy someone else's. Build yours. Choose one priority. Protect a reasonable amount of time. Prepare the night before. Reduce distractions. Get enough sleep. And give yourself permission to adjust. Some mornings will go perfectly. Others won't. You may wake up late. You may get sick. Your child may need you. An unexpected problem may appear. Your schedule may collapse. That's life. Don't turn one bad morning into a bad week. If you miss a day, return the next day. The goal isn't perfection. The goal is direction. And if your direction remains consistent for long enough, the destination begins to change. That is the real power of intentional mornings. They don't just change the first hour of your day. They can gradually change what your entire life looks like. And if your direction remains consistent for long enough, the destination begins to change. But there is still one question we haven't answered. What exactly should you put into those protected hours? Because simply waking up early isn't enough. You could wake up at 5 o'clock every morning and spend those hours scrolling through your phone. You could wake up early and spend 2 hours doing meaningless tasks. You could even become extremely efficient at things that don't matter. The goal isn't to fill your morning. The goal is to give your morning a purpose. A useful way to think about this is to divide the things that matter into a few broad areas. Your work, your health, your relationships, and your personal growth. These 4 areas may look different for every person, but together they create a more balanced picture of success. Let's start with work. Your career doesn't improve simply because you spend more hours working. What improves your career is becoming more valuable. That means developing skills, solving difficult problems, building experience, creating useful things, learning from people who are better than you, and building relationships with people who respect your work. These activities often require concentration. And concentration is difficult to find when your entire day is filled with interruptions. That's why your morning can become a powerful period for career development. Imagine you're trying to learn a difficult technical skill. During the day, you have classes, work, messages, meetings, and other responsibilities. At night, you're tired. But in the morning, you have 45 minutes. 45 minutes may not seem like much. But if you use that time 5 days a week, you've created almost 4 hours of focused learning every week. Over a year, that's more than 200 hours. 200 hours of deliberate learning can take you much further than you might expect. And that's the difference between wishing for improvement and creating improvement. The same principle applies to health. Your health is one of those things people often postpone because there is no immediate deadline. Nobody calls you and says, You must exercise by 8 a.m. or your day will collapse. So exercise gets pushed aside, until eventually your body reminds you that postponing health has a cost. You don't need an extreme fitness routine. You might simply walk, stretch, cycle, run, do strength training, practice yoga, anything that you can realistically maintain. The important thing is that you stop treating your health as something you will deal with after everything else is finished. Because everything else is rarely finished. There will always be work. There will always be responsibilities. Your body doesn't need the leftovers. It needs attention. And then there are relationships. This is an area where productivity advice can sometimes become too narrow. We hear so much about goals, careers, routines, and achievement that we forget something obvious. Your relationships are part of your life. A successful career cannot replace meaningful human connection. You may not need an hour every morning to strengthen your relationships. Sometimes 15 minutes of genuine attention is more valuable than an entire evening spent together while everyone is distracted by their phones. Have breakfast together. Talk to your partner. Spend a few quiet minutes with your children. Call someone you haven't spoken to in a while. Ask a real question and actually listen to the answer. These moments may not increase your salary. They may not appear on a productivity chart. But years later, they may be among the moments you value most. And then there is personal growth. This is where mornings can become particularly exciting. Because personal growth is often the part of life that gets postponed indefinitely. You might want to read more, learn a language, study psychology, understand finance, improve your communication, learn programming, write, draw, build something, start a side project. The list can be endless. But without protected time, these goals remain wishes. So give them a place. You don't need to pursue everything at once. Choose one, then give it consistent attention. And here is something interesting. When you make progress in one area, it can improve the others. Exercise can increase your energy. Better energy can improve your work. Better work can reduce stress. Less stress can improve your relationships. Learning can increase confidence. Confidence can change the way you communicate. The areas of your life are connected. That's why the goal isn't to become productive at the expense of everything else. The goal is to build a life where the important areas support each other. Now, there is another reason people struggle with this. They underestimate how much control they actually have over their schedules. Of course, some responsibilities cannot be moved. You may have fixed working hours. You may have children. You may have classes. You may have responsibilities that you cannot simply eliminate. But there are usually more flexible activities around those fixed commitments than we realize. For example, consider your evening. You might spend 30 minutes preparing tomorrow's breakfast. Another 20 minutes looking for clothes. Another 15 minutes searching for something you misplaced. Another 30 minutes scrolling. Individually, these activities don't seem significant. Together, they can consume a large portion of your evening. And that matters because your evening determines the condition in which you enter tomorrow morning. So ask yourself, what can I prepare tonight that will make tomorrow easier? Prepare your clothes. Prepare your bag. Write down your priorities. Set out your workout equipment. Decide what you'll study. Put your book on your desk. Charge your devices. Make tomorrow obvious. The fewer decisions you need to make when you wake up, the easier it becomes to start. This idea is particularly useful when you are tired or stressed. Because decision-making consumes mental energy. If you wake up and immediately have to decide what to do, you may choose the easiest option. But if the decision was already made, action becomes simpler. And sometimes simplicity is more powerful than motivation. Now let's talk about something that can quietly destroy all of this. The belief that you need to be perfect. You don't. Your schedule will break. Some mornings will be terrible. You will oversleep. You will get distracted. You will have unexpected responsibilities. You may lose an entire week. That doesn't mean the system failed. It means you're human. A good routine should have a recovery mechanism. If you miss Monday, return Tuesday. If you miss the morning, use the evening. Do an hour, do 20 minutes. If you can't complete the entire workout, take a walk. If you can't study for an hour, study for 15 minutes. The habit doesn't need to be perfect. It needs to stay alive. Think about a person learning to play an instrument. They don't become skilled because they practiced perfectly every day. They become skilled because they returned again and again. The same principle applies to your time. Your goal is not perfect mornings. Your goal is a life that gradually becomes more intentional. And this is where planning becomes important. A surprisingly useful habit is spending a little time at the end of each week thinking about the next one. Not hours. Just enough to answer a few questions. What are the most important things I need to accomplish? What deserves focused attention? What could become a problem if I ignore it? What personal activity do I want to protect? When will I exercise? When will I spend time with people I care about? What do I want my weekend to look like? This simple review can prevent the week from becoming a series of random reactions. Instead of Monday arriving and forcing you to figure everything out, you already have a direction. And that makes your mornings more useful. Because your morning routine should serve a larger plan. It shouldn't exist separately from your life. Suppose your major goal is to change careers. Then your morning learning time should contribute to that goal. If your goal is better health, your morning movement should contribute to it. If your goal is stronger relationships, your morning family time should contribute to it. If your goal is building a creative project, your morning writing or creation time should contribute to it. Your routine becomes powerful when it connects today's actions with tomorrow's identity. And that leads to one of the most important questions you can ask. What kind of person am I becoming through the way I spend my time? Because your calendar is not just a schedule. It is a reflection of your priorities. Look at your week. Where does your time go? That tells you what your current life is actually organized around. You may say that health matters. But if you spend 0 hours exercising and 10 hours scrolling, your calendar is telling a different story. You may say learning matters. But if learning never appears on your schedule, perhaps it isn't yet a priority in practice. You may say family matters. But if every available evening is given to work, your calendar is revealing the conflict. This isn't meant to make you feel guilty. It's meant to make you aware. Because awareness gives you the opportunity to change. And change doesn't have to be dramatic. Maybe you reclaim 20 minutes. Then another 20. Maybe you move one activity. Maybe you eliminate one unnecessary commitment. Maybe you say no to something. And saying no is an important part of time management. Every yes has a cost. When you agree to something, you're giving away a piece of your limited time. That doesn't mean you should become selfish. It means you should understand the trade-off. If you say yes to another unnecessary meeting, you may be saying no to focused work. If you say yes to another evening of mindless scrolling, you may be saying no to sleep. If you say yes to every request from everyone, you may eventually say no to your own priorities. Successful people are often good at deciding what they will not do. They don't necessarily have more discipline. They simply understand that time is limited. And because time is limited, attention must be selective. You cannot give your best to everything. So decide what deserves your best. This is also why your morning can be protected from unnecessary communication. You don't have to begin the day by knowing everything that happened while you were asleep. The world will survive if you don't check your messages for 30 minutes. Your inbox will still be there. Social media will still be there. News will still be there. But your concentration may not be there later. Once your attention is fragmented, getting it back can be difficult. So give yourself a buffer. A quiet period before the information flood begins. Use it to create something before you start consuming everything. That's a surprisingly powerful shift. Most mornings begin with consumption. News, messages, videos, posts, emails. Try beginning with creation. Write something, learn something, build something, exercise, plan, think. Then enter the world. You begin the day as a participant rather than simply a consumer. And that feeling can change the tone of the entire day. Now imagine doing this for an entire year. Not perfectly, just consistently. You wake up. You protect a small amount of time. You work on something important. You repeat. At first, nobody notices. Your friends don't notice. Your colleagues don't notice. Even you may not notice. But after several months, the results begin appearing. Your body feels different. Your knowledge is deeper. Your work becomes stronger. Your confidence increases. Your relationships may become more intentional. Your weekends become more memorable. And one day you look back and realize that your life didn't change because of one huge decision. It changed because of hundreds of small decisions that seemed almost meaningless at the time. That is the real power of time. Time compounds. A small decision repeated often enough becomes a lifestyle. A lifestyle repeated for years becomes a life. So perhaps the question isn't, how can I become more productive tomorrow? Maybe the better question is, what small routine could I repeat for the next 5 years? That question changes everything, because now you're not chasing a temporary burst of motivation. You're building an operating system for your life. And the best operating systems are simple. Wake up, protect your priorities, do meaningful work, take care of your body, give attention to people you love, rest, repeat, adjust when necessary, and continue. There is no need to make your life complicated. In fact, the more complicated your system becomes, the more likely you are to abandon it. Keep the routine simple enough that you can follow it even on an ordinary day. Because ordinary days are where your life actually happens. Not on motivational Mondays, not on the first day of the year, not when you suddenly feel inspired. On ordinary Tuesday mornings, on boring Wednesday afternoons, on rainy Sunday evenings. Those are the moments that build your future. And that is why your morning matters. It gives you a small opportunity, before the noise begins, to choose who you want to be today. Not someday. Today. Maybe you have been postponing something for years. Maybe it's a book you want to write, a degree you want to complete, a skill you want to master, a healthier body, a stronger relationship, a business idea, a creative project. Whatever it is, stop waiting for the perfect time. There may never be one. Instead, find a small piece of tomorrow morning. Protect it, use it, then come back the next day and do it again. Because the future is not built in huge chunks. It is built in small pieces of time. And sometimes, one quiet hour before breakfast is enough to start changing everything. And sometimes, one quiet hour before breakfast is enough to start changing everything. Because the real lesson isn't about breakfast. It isn't even really about mornings. It is about ownership. Ownership of your time, ownership of your attention, and ultimately, ownership of the direction of your life. Every day, you are going to spend your hours somewhere. The only question is whether you will decide where those hours go, or whether other people, notifications, habits, and circumstances will decide for you. That is a much bigger question than productivity. Because time is not something you can save forever. You can't put today's unused hour into a bank account and withdraw it next year. Once an hour is gone, it is gone. You can earn more money. You can buy new things. You can recover from a bad decision. But you cannot buy back yesterday morning. That is why being intentional with your time matters so much. And perhaps the most useful way to begin is incredibly simple. Tomorrow morning, don't try to change your entire life. Don't create a complicated routine. Don't set 10 goals. Just choose one thing that genuinely matters to you. Then give it your attention before the day becomes noisy. If that means getting up 30 minutes earlier, do it. If it means preparing everything the night before, do it. If it means putting your phone in another room, do it. If it means going to bed earlier, do it. Make the first step easy. Then repeat it. And after a few days, you may notice something. You feel different, not because you suddenly became more successful, but because you started the day by doing something you chose. That creates a small feeling of control. And control matters. When your entire day consists of reacting to other people's demands, you can finish the day feeling as if you accomplished a lot while somehow getting nowhere. But when you complete one meaningful thing before the noise begins, you create evidence that your priorities matter too. You begin to understand that your goals don't have to wait for permission. They deserve a place in your schedule. This is especially important when your goal is long-term. Long-term goals are easy to neglect because they don't usually punish you immediately. If you skip one day of exercise, nothing dramatic happens. If you skip one day of studying, your career doesn't collapse. If you don't work on your personal project today, nobody may even notice. That's exactly why these things are dangerous to postpone. The consequences are delayed. The rewards. The person who exercises for 20 minutes today may not look different tomorrow. The person who studies for 30 minutes today may not become an expert tomorrow. The person who spends quality time with their family today may not feel that anything extraordinary happened. But repeat those actions for years, and the difference becomes enormous. That is the strange mathematics of life. Small actions often have small immediate results and huge long-term consequences. And the reverse is also true. Small distractions can have tiny immediate costs and enormous long-term consequences. 10 minutes of scrolling doesn't feel dangerous. But 10 minutes repeated every day becomes dozens of hours every year. One late night doesn't destroy your health. But years of poor sleep can change how you feel every day. One missed workout doesn't matter. But repeatedly postponing exercise can eventually become a lifestyle. One ignored relationship may not seem serious. But repeated neglect can slowly create distance that becomes difficult to repair. Your daily choices are quiet. Their consequences are not. So perhaps the goal of a morning routine is not to make you more productive. Perhaps it is to make your small daily choices more intentional. And that brings us to a final idea. You should occasionally ask yourself, is the way I'm spending my time helping me become the person I want to become? Not the person your parents expect. Not the person your friends admire. Not the person social media tells you to become. You. What kind of life would actually make you proud? Maybe it's a high-paying career. Maybe it's financial freedom. Maybe it's a healthy body. Maybe it's a peaceful home. Maybe it's meaningful relationships. Maybe it's creative freedom. Maybe it's a combination of several things. Whatever your answer is, your calendar should eventually begin to reflect it. Because goals written on paper are wishes. Goals supported by time become plans. And plans repeated through action become results. So look at your mornings. Look at your evenings. Look at your weekends. Look at your calendar. Where are the things that matter to you? If they're nowhere, don't blame yourself. Just recognize the problem. Then make a change. Move one important thing into your schedule. Protect it. Give it a beginning time. Give it an ending time. And treat that appointment with yourself as seriously as you would treat an appointment with someone else. Because your future self is depending on you. Think about that for a moment. The person you will be 5 years from now is being created by the decisions you make today. That future person will either thank you, or wonder why you kept postponing everything. 5 years from now, you could have hundreds of mornings behind you. What will those mornings have produced? More scrolling, more reacting, more unfinished plans, or hundreds of hours invested in something meaningful. You don't need to know exactly where you'll be 5 years from now. You just need to know what direction you're moving. And then take the next step. That is what makes this idea so practical. You don't need a perfect vision of your entire future. You need a meaningful priority for tomorrow morning. Then another one the morning after that. And another. Eventually, the path becomes clearer because you're moving. So tonight, before you sleep, take a few minutes. Put your phone aside. Think about tomorrow. Ask yourself 3 simple questions. What matters most to me right now? What small action would move me forward? And when will I do it? Don't write 10 answers. Choose one. Then prepare for it. If you're going to exercise, put your clothes ready. If you're going to study, prepare your materials. If you're going to read, place the book where you can see it. If you're going to write, decide what you're going to write about. Make tomorrow's first meaningful action obvious. Then go to sleep knowing that your morning already has a purpose. When the alarm rings, you don't need to negotiate with yourself. You already decided. Get up, begin, and don't worry about whether the first day feels extraordinary. It probably won't. The first day might feel uncomfortable. The second might feel boring. The third might be difficult. That's normal. A habit doesn't become valuable because it feels exciting. It becomes valuable because it keeps working when the excitement disappears. Eventually, the routine becomes familiar. Then familiar becomes normal. And normal becomes part of who you are. At that point, you don't have to constantly motivate yourself. You simply do it. That's when a routine becomes powerful. And perhaps one morning, months from now, you'll look back at your old routine and realize something. You didn't suddenly find more time. You simply stopped giving so much of your time away. You stopped allowing every notification to interrupt you. You stopped waiting for free time. You stopped assuming that your dreams could survive on leftovers. You started protecting the things that mattered. And that is a very different way to live. Because a meaningful life isn't necessarily one where every minute is productive. It is one where your time reflects your values. There should be time for work. There should be time for ambition. There should be time for learning. There should be time for health. But there should also be time for laughter. Time for family. Time for friends. Time for rest. Time for doing absolutely nothing. You don't have to optimize every second. You just have to stop accidentally spending all your seconds. And that may be the biggest lesson to take away. Your time is limited. Your attention is limited. Your energy is limited. So spend them deliberately. Don't give your best hours automatically to whatever happens to be loudest. Give some of them to what matters most. And if the morning gives you that opportunity, use it. Wake up. Take a breath. Stay away from the noise for a little while. And before the world starts telling you what it needs from you, ask yourself what you need from yourself. Maybe you need to become healthier. Maybe you need to become more skilled. Maybe you need to build something. Maybe you need to reconnect with someone. Maybe you simply need a little peace. Whatever it is, give it a place. Because your life is not waiting somewhere in the future. It is happening in these ordinary mornings. These ordinary afternoons. These ordinary evenings. And the way you spend them is quietly shaping the person you will eventually become. So don't wait for Monday. Don't wait for the first of the month. Don't wait for a new year. And don't wait until life becomes less busy. Start with tomorrow. Start small. Protect one meaningful block of time. Then do it again, and again, and again. Because one intentional morning can change one day. A series of intentional mornings can change a habit. A series of habits can change your lifestyle. And a changed lifestyle can change your life. That is why the most successful people aren't necessarily the people who have discovered some secret supply of extra hours. They have simply learned something that most of us forget. Time has to be directed. If you don't decide what deserves your attention, something else will. So decide, protect, act, repeat, and let the results accumulate. Thank you for spending this time with Volume and Vision. If this summary gave you a useful idea, don't let it end as something you simply listened to and forgot. Choose one idea from this video and put it into practice tomorrow morning. Even if it takes only 20 minutes. And if you enjoyed this practical exploration of productivity, personal growth, and powerful books, subscribe to Volume and Vision for more. Because every book can give you an idea, but an idea becomes valuable only when you turn it into action. So tomorrow morning, before the notifications begin, before the messages arrive, and before the world starts demanding your attention, give yourself a little time. Use it for something that matters. Your future self may be grateful that you did. This is Volume and Vision. Keep learning, keep growing, and remember, you may not be able to control how many hours you have. But you can decide what those hours are going to mean.